You're listening to the Turn Autism Around podcast, episode number 155. Today, we have an original member of the online course that I created back in 2015. Her name is Teresa Lyons. She is still with our online course and community after all of these years. And today we are talking, Teresa is a licensed board certified behavior analyst. She's a special ed teacher, a regular ed teacher, and the owner of a Fit Learning Center in Virginia. So today we're talking about her journey a little bit as a professional, getting from teaching to ABA, to verbal behavior, to precision teaching, and how and why she joined my online course. And she actually turns the tables on me a little bit and asks me some questions about how I created these courses and free content, paid content, and how we are all on the same mission. And maybe you are too, and on our mission to improve the lives of children with autism and their families, and also to empower parents to help detect and treat the earliest signs of autism. That's what it's all about. Teresa Lyons brings 30 years of expertise in the field to us today, and it's a great episode. Hope you love it as much as I did. So Teresa, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so you're one of the original members of my courses, my online courses and community. And so I recognize your name, and we have a bunch to talk about today.
Yes.
But before we get into all of that, tell our listeners how you came upon falling into the autism world.
So when I was going through my undergraduate work in New York in the early 90s, I was working as a paraprofessional, and I was having students that seemed to be falling in my lap that had that diagnosis of autism, and teachers found that I did really well with them. So as I worked through my programs, I always had this lens of this population is of interest to me. I started teaching early childhood special ed and started having students with autism, and just took off. I just needed to absorb everything I could about autism so I could serve that community, because I recognized that I brought a certain skill set to working with them. And so it's just been one job after another that has led me to different ways of working with the population. We're first working with actually teaching, and then training teachers, and then working at an administrative level, and then working in the Department of Education, actually going in and training school systems and changing policies and practices around autism. And then all of that work has landed with, I have a nephew with autism now. And so all of it has come to bear of being a help my sister and brother-in-law, really to help my nephew Logan and navigate the ABA world and things like that. So it's been, a 30-year career of just following autism all the way around.
Wow. And so at some point you also incorporated the verbal behavior approach. Yes. And then got really super involved with precision teaching and fluency-based instruction. So when did that happen?
So the verbal behavior work started when I was working some systems change work. I was working for a VCU's Autism Center and was working with a school division in far Southwest Virginia, Wise County. We had started a class for children with autism that the early childhood special ed classes just were not meeting their needs. They needed more intensive language and focus on that. And so I was starting to follow some of your work, had gone to a training done by Rick Cabina in precision teaching, and your name came up during that. So I started following that and following your work. And with the things that you were sharing, we went to a training that you had done, that whole team. And so we just started applying verbal behavior there. And we had this amazing classroom, and kids were doing really well, and they were able to be integrated back into the regular classroom. But we're hitting this piece when they hit second grade. That like the verbal behavior was amazing, but these kids were having huge academic gaps and they were struggling. And for me, there was a piece that we needed to add. And so I went on this journey because I heard about precision teaching in my ABA coursework, and I loved it. And it made sense to me as a former athlete. So I just went on just a journey to figure this thing out and how can we apply it to that classroom. And I went to a conference and I met Donnie and Kendra Newsom, who own a fit learning center in Reno, and ran up to them and said, I want this. This is what I'm looking for to address that gap that I was seeing academically. And so just conversations started. And by April, I had opened up a fit learning center, and I had met them in September. So it was very, very quick from moving from being in the classroom, working with early learners, to actually starting a precision teaching center that worked with more of our intermediate learners and those without disabilities.
So I know we had Kim Berens on pretty recently this year, and she is she the creator of Fit Learning?
Mm-hmm.
And what does FIT stand for?
You know, I don't know that FIT stands for anything particular, but I know we talk about cognitive fitness. And, you know, part of what we do is, you know, our whole program addresses the idea of that when a child is cognitively fit, they can work in the face of distractions, they can work with endurance, that they can take their skills and actually apply them to higher performance standards, that they can maintain their skills in the absence of instruction. So when you can do all that, you're cognitively fit, so which is fit learning. So that's the piece. We're trying to build that cognitive fitness.
Okay, so we're going to link Kim Berens' show in the show notes here. I also did whole podcast interviews with my BCBA mentor, Rick Cabina. We can link that. Janet Twyman.
Yes.
Amy Evans and Kelsey did a podcast together on fluency-based instruction and precision teaching. And then recently I also had Amy Sutherland on, who wrote the book, What Shamu Taught Me. And she really talks about animal training and its implications for human training, because we are animals too. And really all of the basic science is so important here. I've done my whole PhD dissertation. We can link that in the show notes on fluency-based instruction. And as you mentioned, endurance, maintenance, being able to do things in the face of distraction are all some of the benefits of fluency. And this is fluency, and ABA even is not about kids with autism. It's about learning new skills, right?
Correct.
So,
I mean, I serve learners that have no disability to those who have disabilities. So it's for all. Yeah.
And is your Fit Learning, is it more like a tutoring center or more like a school, or how do you work?
So when we talk with parents, we really say it's tutoring on steroids because it's more intensive. A tutoring model is about putting a Band-Aid on and helping that kid to pass the grade level which they're at. Our center is about getting to the foundational skills and where those holes are. And we find when we address those holes in the foundational skills, we have acceleration at higher level points. And so when learners come to us, it's not a once a week or twice a week. They come to us 5 days a week, 50 minutes a day per academic domain that we're working on. So as the best term we use is that we're learning labs, because we're applying the science of learning right in our sessions with every single one of our learners.
And you're able to get them not only caught up, but accelerated in some cases by a year or two.
All cases. I've been doing this for 4.5 years, and I haven't had one single learner that has not met at least a year's growth. You know, year's growth is what we know as a lab, all of our labs, as far as the research that we get as the minimum growth, but many of us get 2 to 3 years of growth within a 40-hour enrollment, which when we talk with parents, that's a work week for an adult. You know, when you think about that context, you realize, wow, you know, in a work week, we're getting 1 year growth for our learners.
But they're not coming for 40 hours a week. They're coming over
a
period or something like that.
Sure, yes. Yeah, most of my learners are go ahead, sorry.
It is amazing how kids struggle and get years behind. Yeah, and Kim Berens talks about that year or two of growth. Like that is, you can't have a Fit Learning Center unless you can replicate that growth across all students who enroll. But do you have, I know we're going to talk about my courses and the people that are listening, I would think are working with kids who have language issues, have autism. And so, and I know as a behavior analyst and, you know, an expert to some degree on precision teaching as well, that, you know, if you can't communicate and you can't comprehend that these academic skills have to be language first before you get really into even teaching colors or prepositions or pronouns. So do you have prerequisite skills for a student to come to fit learning with more moderate to severe autism and more language needs?
Yeah, we do. And in fact, I just added a learner that I assessed and had to make a referral to another BCBA to do a lot more verbal behavior work and some of the instructional behaviors necessary for him to participate in our model. So for us, we're looking for learners who have an echoic repertoire because we use direct instruction, and direct instruction involves me saying things and the child repeating their responses. And so there needs to be a good echoic control. There also needs to be not a lot of interfering behavior within the instructional session. That doesn't mean there aren't some. All of our learners come to us, particularly because they've been failing under other models, and so you have a lot of learning barriers. But kind of the learning barriers are running away from the table, climbing under the table, not staying with the task. Anytime we have to do hand over hand, that's something that needs to be addressed because we're looking for learners that can be independent when given in a direction and then to be able to follow through with it. Those are not deal breakers, and every lab approaches differently. I've taken on a few learners because of my expertise and background in autism of some learners that are pre-fit. I have 2 learners right now that are more pre-fit, but within 20 hours, these kids are now fit learners. I had a little guy who I really debated about taking him on as a little kid with autism, but I saw these glimpses of what I know can be done with the fluency work we're doing, that he was a late 1-2 verbal behavior kid. Now people in the community are like, we don't see the autism. He's having full conversations with everybody in less than 50 hours because of the way we attack the fluency part of it's not just about repeating what I say, it's repeating what I say at certain rates, and just that increased language. So it's neat to see how the two pair together.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So originally you're an original member of our course and community. And I think this ties in nicely to kind of jump to the course and community and how you found it and joined the first cohort. So you had previously seen me speak live in Virginia.
Yes.
So my first book came out, Verbal Behavior Approach, came out in 2007. I remember a couple episodes in 2000, a couple live presentations in Virginia around 2011. I remember that because actually my dad was very injured in an accident and was very sick and in the ICU, and I had to train it down to Virginia, and I went twice that same time frame. And I really did spend a lot of time before I started my course in 2015, just doing one-to-one work and traveling around the country and around the world speaking on autism. So what made you decide to join the first cohort of what now is called the Verbal Behavior Bundle? Back then it was called Autism ABA Help, Online Training for Professionals and quote unquote gung-ho parents, because I wanted to get professionals mostly and the parents who were going to professional type conferences like myself. Like I was trying to figure it out too. And so what made you decide to join us?
Sure. At the time that I think around the time you were coming to Virginia, I was working on becoming a BCBA, and the individual supervising me had a lot of training in verbal behavior. And so that was my first foray into it. He also had a lot of skill sets in organizational behavior management. So these pieces were tying for me, but I needed more. And so I took a group of teachers to come to your training, and we just ate it up and started applying a lot of the work. I remember driving back in the car and we were talking about the counting man in the shoebox. Like, how can we take that back to our classroom, and do it now? And just found that the things you were teaching applied very realistic, in a very real way to what was going on in the classroom and what we needed to do. And so I started following you. And as soon as I saw you offer that, I'm like, I'm all in. And then was very pleased to the point that I tell everybody about your work and have had a number of families go through your courses and seen amazing changes with their learners as a result of it. In fact, I think you tell the story many times about the mom who took the class for her young children and trained her 14-year-old. That's a friend of mine in this community who heard about a lot of the stuff from a lot of my postings and things. So yeah, I've stuck around because it's really benefited, as I communicate with many families, even families that are coming in here and I'm working on the academic piece, they're like, what do we do in the home? Well, I refer them to you. Take this course. This course is going to help you in the home. So it's not, it's a combination of all of it together, and it meets the needs of all my clients.
Yeah. That's great. And you took advantage, also the BCBAs who have taken the course in the past, right? Pretty much from the beginning, I think we built in BCBA credits. So you were able to take advantage of that. And I don't believe you took my toddler course yet. So that is something that you could take and get another 10 credits, but my verbal behavior bundle is 32 credits, including the ethics credits you need. So I don't think we've done an exceptional job with marketing that piece of it. Also, early intervention professionals who need 20 hours a week, a year of credits can use their certificates. But it's really, I've had conversations with other BCBAs like, well, how much is it per credit, per CEU? It's like, no, this is, if you want to change the way you're programming and helping children and families and get a bonus credits, all the credits you need versus, figuring out, well, this is only $10 per CEU and Mary's works out to 20, like, no, it's not about the CEUs. If you want to do kind of crazy CEUs that don't really make your life better and don't make your work as a BCBA better or early intervention professional better, then you can take free courses. You can take those that are $5 a credit or whatever. You want to change your life, then join our online course and community. Would you agree?
Oh, I agree. And the thing about, from the very beginning, what I loved about your content, as a BCBA, sometimes we're looking for a certain level of content. What I like about your content is the parent can understand what you're doing as much as the professional. And the piece that's always been big about me is because I find and I feel that I have a difficulty at times of sending parents to things that are resources for a BCBA because they don't have the science behind it. They don't understand what they're reading. But I can send any parent to anything that you're doing and they can learn from it. And BCBAs can too. And I think sometimes we've got to have that common language about what's going in the home so that we can also communicate that with parents. And I think you make the science of what we do very real. And I think that's something BCBAs or anybody needs so that we can help more learners. And I think that's the critical piece. I think that's, as I watched you grow, I said, one of my comments is you've grown because I think you speak the real language to what people and individuals need to hear. And I think BCBAs would benefit from being a part of that coursework.
Right. And you have remained in our community since 2015. And, after the first couple cohorts, we moved into ongoing membership, small fee to stay on. I added the intermediate learner course, which now my first course and the intermediate course are a bundle. Then I went back and created the toddler preschooler course because I wanted to catch kids before the diagnosis, if possible. Empower the parents to really not just wait in line and worry, but actually do things. And then wrote my new book, Turn Autism Around, to really pull everything together in the easiest way possible, making it very clear to both parents and professionals. And, even the BCBA guidelines of, it's got to be intense, it's got to be, in order to count for credits, it's like, take the courses and use those with a parent training lens, which is built in throughout. And we do need to talk to parents in plain English across the board. I think it is one of, I think my gifts, like probably because I've been a registered nurse for 30 years plus, is a lot of times as a nurse, you're coming in and the doctor just told you and your family that you have a grade 4 glioblastoma, blah, blah, blah. And then I come in and I've got to try to, talk to families about what it is, what it means, how their life might change, and, start to try to answer questions. And interesting because when I go to places, and I haven't traveled to speak, I've done some virtual stuff, but I haven't traveled to speak since before COVID. And but in the past, early on, I would even get requests like, can you come in the morning and speak to parents? And then in the afternoon, you can speak to professionals. And I was like, I always said no.
Yeah.
It's just not a good use of our time.
Yes.
Because I'm going to forget what I say. I'm going to basically repeat the same thing. And why don't we just bring everybody together? And one of the things that you're very active in our Facebook group in sharing your expertise in terms of fluency and those higher academic tests, or maybe he's not ready for prepositions, or maybe he's not ready for colors. And can he label number ID before we talk about addition, or can he do all those things? And I think it is powerful to have parents and professionals in our verbal behavior bundle Facebook group. Would you say?
Oh, I agree. I think you've got a lot of parents that are giving suggestions, and the suggestions are amazing, but it's neat to have professionals, and I see this throughout, that come behind and say, hey, maybe rethink that a little bit. Let's tweak that idea a little bit because this is what the science says, but still using that common language. And I find that times when I'm responding, it's either I'm the first response that kind of gives that more clinical, but in a parent language. And it helps kind of keep that what I know you're trying to do is you're applying the science. You want people applying the science and keep with the rigor of the science, but also have this flexibility of where parents can be real. And I think the clinicians and the BCBAs as a part of that help keep the two married together. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And it's really important. So the reason we're doing this today, the reason that I asked you to be on the podcast, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but on November 5th in my Facebook page, my public Facebook page, marybarbera.com/Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube by marybarbera.com/YouTube, on Twitter and Instagram, just marybarbera.com/whatever. But on Facebook, I posted a little graphic one Friday at like 4:00. I got this idea on November 5th, and I said, hey, if you and I could sit down for 10 minutes and have a chat, what would you ask me? And you responded, and I recognize your name from our community since you're so active there. And you had some questions about like how, what do you remember your questions or the gist of it?
Yeah, I mean, the gist of it is I followed you for at least 6 years now. Is it 2015 when you first started the first cohort?
Yeah, but you had seen me prior to that.
Right.
So, you've been following me for a decade at least.
Wow, yeah, about a decade. Yeah, since at least 2010. Just following you and seeing where you started and the reach that you've now got. I think it's 90 countries you're touching now. Is that correct, or more?
Just the paid participants from over 90 countries. Yeah. And in terms of my pre-information, I can't imagine that it's not on most of the countries.
Well, so the thing for me, because it speaks to the heart of when I'm looking at things for myself, is it's great working one-on-one. It's great sitting in front of a group of 500 professionals training, but how do you spread it to even further? And what I've seen is you've gone from, presentations, your book, to now having this Facebook group and everything. So my question is, how did you start? What did you do? What is the first thing you did to start drawing people into your vision of turning autism around? And then kind of what has worked and what have been some of the pitfalls? Like if someone like me wanted to do something like this, what should I do? What should I avoid? Those type of things.
Yeah, no, that's a whole big question, but I do want to answer it because I think there's a lot of people out there like you who are very talented, very seasoned professionals. And even with COVID, COVID made everybody wake up to the fact that these in-person conferences are just not scalable. The information inside of conferences, it was great to provide that initial exposure to me to get my information in front of you, but it's just not scalable. So what happened was, I think I was in the right place at the right time, both to get into ABA and verbal behavior. I was highly motivated. I was a parent of a young child. I had a master's in nursing. So like ABA made sense. I was a nurse manager, all the OBM stuff. I didn't know what ABA was or OBM was, but I had a master's in nursing administration from Penn. I took Wharton Business School classes. Like things just lined up. Even before I knew what ABA was, I was publishing research in the nursing field on the problems with shift to shift report, the 7 to 3 shift, giving 3 to 11 shift report, and how that information was missed. I redesigned the whole way shift to shift report was done on my unit and then hospital wide at Thomas Jefferson Hospital. I think it's still going on. And then I would publish things. I would present things in nursing. I worked in staff development, training nurses. So when my son had autism and I started an ABA program, it was like, wow, this is how my mind works. So I became a behavior analyst, again, kind of right time, right place. It was a distance learning program through Penn State. You know, I got a box of VHS tapes and PowerPoints in binders. That was the first sort of distance learning program. I mean, it wasn't online because there really wasn't that capability back in 2003 when I became certified. It was a paper and pencil test given out a couple times a year. But then my first book, really, I wrote my first book not thinking it was going to be in 14 languages and sold over 50,000. Like I just wrote the book because it was like all the books I had used, like Let Me Hear Your Voice, wasn't that I didn't do it that way. I got involved with the Verbal Behavior Project. But anyway, in 2011, I finished my PhD in leadership, and then people were like, well, so what are you going to do now with your doctorate? I'm like, I'm going to figure out how to get this online, because going door to door is really not efficient, and flying to Australia for a group of 300 people or a group of 60 people or wherever I flew or trained or whatever I went, it wasn't enough people to scale it. I knew I had a formula. Actually, now that I have my new book, I have a 4-step formula. Assess, plan, teach, and use easy data to make decisions. I mean, it's all based on everything. So my first book that I read, I actually prepared a little bit, but I read this book, and I don't know how I came upon it, probably in 2011, 2010, called The Millionaire Messenger. And it's by Brendan Burchard. It's a New York Times bestseller, and it was written, a long time ago. And I read it, and it basically said that if you want to spread something big, you're going to have to make a lot of money to support it. And so I started thinking like, okay, how big can I think? Reading that book, and then the internet started, chugging along at the same time. Again, right place, right time. And then I read Jeff Walker's first book, Launch. This is the newest edition. I've had Jeff Walker on the podcast recently. We can link that in the show notes. But it's 2014 edition. I read on a plane in 2014, flying to and from Germany, where I was speaking. I came home in late 2014 in December. And by 2015, I used a $15 book to basically launch my first cohort using a seed launch. I remember one of the advices in the book was send out an email to the people that you have. And by that time, I had a website for my first book, and I had like 2,000 people who had given me their email address, probably you, Teresa. And I sent an email saying, hey, I'm putting the finishing touches on a course on verbal behavior. What do you think I shouldn't miss, or whatever? That's kind of part of Jeff Walker's formula. And got some feedback, and I launched my course. And I didn't know if 3 people were going to buy it or 300 people, just taking orders, all the payment things. I mean, it was very rough back then. And I got like 50 people in the first cohort, and we were off to the races. And like you, a lot of people had good experiences. In terms of what worked and what didn't, I think just listening to people, initially I had been focusing more on professionals because those were the people that were coming,
Right.
To my trainings more so than parents. Because my trainings, like in person, and even the if you think about the intermediate learner course, or even the now what's known as the early learner course, I mean, it's pretty, completing a VB map assessment, programming for prepositions, using task analyses, data collection, using partial data collection. Like, it's not like that, you don't just get it. And with your professional background, but when I started, I think it was 60-40 more professionals than parents. But then as the years went on and I started creating the toddler course and my new book, Turn Autism Around, for parents of young children with early signs of autism. And the fact that like not everybody can sit through now the verbal behavior bundle is 32 hours in total. I mean, you have 6 months to complete it. Plus there's 25 bonus videos, but not everybody has the time,
right,
first of all, and it's intense.
Yep.
And, it's just like, well, it wouldn't be hard. I mean, if everything's broken down, well, I could learn anything. Like I took how to learn piano class,
right,
during COVID, and I could play a couple songs, but I mean, I'm no expert, and I kind of stopped, and I don't have the time and all that stuff. But over the years, that's pretty much how I've learned. I've taken online courses. I joined Jeff Walker's group coaching program. Now I'm in Jeff Walker's mastermind. I've invested a ton of money to learn how to do webinars, how to do podcasts. But if I see other courses teaching you how to do a webinar, then I know how to make it easier for people to learn how to teach their child to talk. So that's kind of, I know that's probably maybe a longer answer. Did you have any follow-up questions or anything you're thinking as I'm talking?
Well, yeah, a couple questions. One, did you have a team that helped you in the beginning, or was it just you doing this?
In the very, very beginning, it was GoDaddy and build a website in a night kind of thing, which was scary. And the marketers say, if you're not embarrassed by your first work, then you're not doing it right. I built a little website, but I quickly learned, like, I got to get some help for the website. And I was fortunate too, because my husband is a physician and he has health insurance, and, and I was working as a consultant. This might be a good thing for people like you, Teresa, and others who might want to, I know there's other people that I've done podcast swaps with and stuff that are getting into the online space with me. And, there's no competition. Like, the more people we can have in here to spread out and help people, the better. But I was still working one-to-one consultant all of 2015 as I started. 2016, 2017, I was probably half, maybe 16 and 17, I was half consulting and half doing the online stuff. And so financially, a lot of people that are starting out, they don't feel like they have the money to pay people. But I was always like, you know what, technical skills are not my strength. And so I did pay people pretty quickly. Now, I didn't have any full-time employees until 2018. And then right now it's just me and one other going to be full-time person coming up. So it's mostly contractors and agencies that help me, but it's a whole thing. But I'd say for somebody like you, Teresa, if you wanted to create something, is, keep your day job, keep the lights on, and hire people to replace you there more, where
Right.
you can still oversee as you start venturing out. And then, just also staying with me in terms of growing. And,
Right.
we probably in the next year or two will have a lot of opportunities for help,
Right.
for coaches, for copywriters, for
Mhm.
you're now, I mean, you're not an official Facebook advisor, but you're practically one. You know what I mean? So as we develop
Spend a
coaching,
lot of time there. Yeah.
you know, I don't know that we're going to start a certification, but that's not off the table. I mean, right now you do get a certificate of completion for these courses,
Yeah.
which, every day we get emails and comments. How can I find somebody that knows the Turn Autism Around approach, or knows at least the verbal behavior
Yeah.
approach?
Yeah.
And so there is a need to create something even much, much
Bigger.
bigger.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
hang with me, Teresa, and
Yeah,
we will.
I'm with you. I'm not planning on going anywhere. I mean, like I said, I think this has been, for me personally, and even working with my nephew Logan, being able to take what you're doing and applying it in the home, but to see the steps you're taking to make it even broader. I love the certification piece, because I think that's something I can say to BCBAs now. The parents are doing this, you can get the certificate to help them. I think that's going to be really helpful, one, for getting that audience you want, of those professionals, because we're all constantly seeking that certificate that's going to further authenticate the work we're doing.
Right. And even though it's not a certification, it's still a certificate of attendance. And I know when I was getting started, even as a BCBA, my first job, I had to make a resume, and I had just been a nurse and then at home for 8 years with my kids, or 6 years. I put actually my trainings on my resume, and
I did too. Yep.
so this is actually, I was just talking to somebody who just became a quote unquote newly minted BCBA. She just studied for hours and hours and invested $1,000 in various how to pass the BCBA exam. And, she's taking my course now to learn how to program and to get her BCBA credits for 2 years. So it can really, I think there's going to be a huge demand as we continue to grow for professionals who really know the approach. And I think the best way is, attend a free workshop. That'll be your first step. marybarbera.com/workshop. You also, I'm not sure if you said it when we were recording or not, but and some of the questions on November 5th were, why are you, trying to market? You said the webinar was free. Why now are you trying to sell me a course? And it's like, I provide a ton of free information, but, if you, first of all, if you pay attention. If I was still paying to be a part of the piano course, I would either have opted out by now, or I would have continued, because you don't pay for things that you're not doing. So, that's why I don't give lifetime access. Like, you're either here and paying and learning and growing, or, we're going to probably provide different things. So, but the other thing
the money thing, yeah, that.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say the money thing, and it's something as me as a business owner, I've had to learn along the way, is it's this idea you're not paying for my time in the video, you're paying for my expertise that I've spent years on mastering to deliver a really good quality 50 minutes to an hour session. So you get me for 50 minutes, but you get 30-year history of research, training, certification, and everything that I can apply in the 50 minutes or the hour, the 32-hour bundle. It shifts the focus when we put out, this is what the cost is for what we're doing, because there is a lot of value. And I don't know what the cost of your things are now, but I know I got a lot of value, no matter what it was I paid. I've been in part of your community for 6-7 years now, and it's paid back so much more. So it's like shifting our thinking about how we're looking at money and what we're doing and why we're doing it. that's really for me been a deal breaker as I talk with families about the cost of services.
Mm-hmm. And staying in that, what I call sea of free,
Yeah.
you can try to piece this together. I could learn how to play the piano just by watching a variety of YouTube clips. There's just too much information out there about autism, and you don't know what you can trust.
Right.
And like you said, based on my experience and everything, I am basically curating all the content into being as efficient as possible. But you do send a lot of families, and I appreciate that, and other professionals to my free information. And whenever anybody's out there and thinking, I wonder what Mary does say on prepositions, or I wonder what she does say on colors or tantrums or biting, just search and have your families and other professionals search Mary autism plus your topic, and pretty many times, most times, I would say 95% of the time, you will find something, a piece of free information that might help a family or a professional just take the next step to learning how to solve that one issue.
Yeah.
All right. So I like to end the same way, and I appreciate you, coming on. I know hopefully this was helpful to people who want to, professionals who, like you, are specialists in a certain area and talking, but it's also helpful to encourage people to join us on the mission to really improve the way autism is detected and treated around the world forever, by empowering parents and other professionals to really make some big movements. Because I've been in this for 2 decades in the autism world, and unfortunately, things haven't changed enough.
Yes, I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. So part of my podcast goals are for parents and professionals to be less stressed and lead happier lives. So, Teresa, what are your self-care tips or stress management tools that you use that might help others?
Sure. Back when I started the Fit Learning Center, I found that I was spending a lot of time in the work I was doing. As you know, to start a business, it takes a lot of hours, a lot of work, a lot of tears, a lot of just spreading yourself thin. And one of my colleagues is a life coach, Laura Wade, and she was doing a class called the Passion Test. And it was really neat, where she just spent some time mapping out what's important to you. And I remember what rose to the top. It was my faith, my family, and my friends. And I started looking at and saying, all right, am I doing any of those things in my life? And what I found was I wasn't. I was fully invested in growing my business, but every time my nephew said, hey, you want to hang out? No, I got something else I got to do. Every time a family member said, hey, you want to do this? No, something I got to do. And so I started redistributing my time and saying yes more often to those 3 things. And what I found was the stress started moving away, and the tasks that I needed to get done were still getting done, but I was having more joy in it. And so all the time as I'm working in my life, I just find myself, when those questions come up or those opportunities that follow those 3 passions, I ask, can I say yes? And I should say yes. And so that has evened things out for me and reduced a lot of the stress that I found that I was under when I had so much on top of me. My nephews are, of course, very happy, because when they hide in the bathroom and call me now and say, can I come to your house? The answer is always yes.
I love that. I love that. I haven't ever heard that before. And I think that's one of the best answers I've ever gotten on that question. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So thanks so much for joining us. And hopefully our listeners really love this episode as much as I did. And I look forward to seeing you in our community for many, many more years.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it.